Sunrise in Tapalpa, Jalisco wasn't quiet. It was rotor blades overhead, then gunfire cracking through the pines. Mexican authorities say special forces finally reached the ghost they'd hunted for years. The target was Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, El Mencho, the leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. They say he was wounded in the clash and died while being airlifted out. Within hours, parts of western Mexico looked like it was shutting down. Vehicles were torched into roadblocks. Highways were sealed, airports and tourist zones filled with rumors and frantic videos, some real, some manufactured to amplify fear. One raid, one name, and parts of the region buckled. So what exactly happened in Tapalpa? And how did El Mencho's final hours trigger an overnight eruption? Before Tapalpa, there was Aguililla, avocado country in Michoacán. Profiles built from reporting and court records say Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes grew up poor, left school young, and as a teenager guarded marijuana fields. In the 1980s, he slipped into California. By 1992, US court records described him tied to a federal heroin case. He took a plea, served about 3 years in US federal prison, and was deported back to Mexico in the mid-1990s. Back home, Reuters and other reporting describe him as a former police officer who eventually crossed over into the Milenio cartel's world. When Milenio splintered, a new faction rose in Jalisco around 2009, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG. The group's early propaganda used the name Los Matazetas, promising war on rivals. By the mid-2010s, CJNG had a reputation for military-style firepower and bold attacks on authorities, including a failed 2015 attempt to capture El Mencho that ended with an army helicopter shot down. He stayed mostly unseen, but not untouchable, so wanted that the US reward for information leading to his arrest or conviction was raised to as much as $15 million. The story of Tapalpa starts with a tip, and depending on who you believe, a mistake. Mexican forces were led to a secluded luxury villa inside the Tapalpa Country Club, a gated pocket tucked into the mountains of Jalisco. The lead was tied to someone close to El Mencho, described as a lover, and the intel narrowed his safe world down to one address. On February 22nd, 2026, Mexican special forces moved in. An ambush-style raid unfolded, units closing on the property, and a firefight that turned a quiet resort road into chaos. El Mencho tried to break contact and run, heading out the back garden and toward the tree line. That's where he was hit. He was injured during the clash and later died while being transported by helicopter. His death occurred on February 22nd, 2026, in Tapalpa, Jalisco, attributed to blood loss from gunshot wounds. What matters next is this: Mexico didn't frame this as luck. The hunt had outside support, with an American military-led group helping map cartel networks, and US intelligence providing a target package, while Mexican forces planned and executed the strike. Mexico's defense ministry publicly acknowledged cooperation with the US, pushing back on rumors that foreign troops were on the ground. Inside the villa, the scene was jarring in its normalcy. Groceries, toiletries, medication, religious images, a snapshot that the most wanted man in Mexico didn't live in a bunker, he lived in hiding, one quiet morning away from being found. That's the turning point. Not just that El Mencho was finally hit, but that the cartel's power now had to prove itself without him. And in Mexico, that proof usually comes fast and loud. Soon after the first reports, the response attributed to Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación was not a speech or a statement. It was traffic, fire, and panic. Across Jalisco and beyond, armed crews seized buses and cargo trucks, then torched them sideways across major roads. Officials described dozens of roadblocks spanning multiple states, a scorched chain meant to choke movement and broadcast one message. Even rumors about Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes could paralyze daily life across wide stretches of the country. In Jalisco, gunmen struck security forces in multiple incidents. Authorities later reported dozens of deaths linked to the raid and subsequent retaliation, including members of the National Guard and suspected cartel gunmen, while cautioning that figures can shift as cases are verified in a fast-moving crisis. Tourism was caught in the crosswind. Flights into Puerto Vallarta were disrupted as visitors filmed smoke rising near roadways. Some travelers described navigating around burned-out vehicles en route to the airport. Financial markets reacted as well. with volatility touching companies tied to air travel and airport operations amid uncertainty. Mexico's government moved quickly to project control. President Claudia Sheinbaum said conditions were stabilizing and roadblocks were being cleared, while additional troops were deployed into Jalisco. The Fiscalía General de la República opened proceedings across multiple states, and Security Secretary Omar Garcia Harfuch announced dozens of arrests in coordinated operations. Then came the second battlefield, the internet. A surge of exaggerated and false posts claimed airports were under siege, recycled old footage, and amplified panic faster than official updates. Authorities said they were examining accounts for possible links to organized crime, underscoring that fear itself can be part of the strategy. El Mencho is gone, but CJ&G didn't vanish with him. His death forces the question the cartel has dodged for years. Who holds the wheel when the driver is removed? In the first hours after the raid, the answer came in flames, roadblocks, arson, and a wave of fear designed to prove the machine still runs. And when people tried to figure out what was real, the internet turned into its own crime scene. Recycled videos, fake airport sieges, and rumor after rumor moving faster than patrol cars. Mexico's government called the operation a victory, and in one sense it was. The most hunted name in the country was finally stopped. But victories in cartel wars don't land like movie endings. They land like Mondays, travel disrupted, routines interrupted, tourists rattled by cancellations and smoke, and families counting the dead, soldiers and suspected gunmen, with other cases still being verified. And if history is any guide, removing a boss can do two things at once. It can weaken a cartel's coordination, and it can trigger a scramble as lieutenants fight to prove they're the next voice everyone must obey. Tapalpa matters because it showed how thin normal can be when one organization can severely disrupt a region with a few orders. The raid ended one man's story. The next chapter is about whether Mexico can replace fear with something stronger, trust, justice, and safety that lasts longer than a single night of fires. For years, El Mencho was a symbol of how organized crime can outspend, outgun, and outweight the state. Washington had a multi-million-dollar reward on him, and Mexico faced constant pressure to show results. But the people who pay the real cost aren't in the headlines. They're the families trapped behind burning barricades, the small businesses that lose income when roads close, the kids who learn to measure distance by the sound of gunfire. El Mencho is gone! The question is whether the conditions that allowed him to rise, corruption, impunity, and desperation, will finally be treated like the real target.